ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وبيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدًا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وأكرم وأنعم على حبيبنا المصطفى محمد ابن عبد الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. قال عز من قائل بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. My dear brothers and sisters and brothers, I advise you all, as I advise myself first and foremost, to be with Allah, to be conscious of Allah, to seek from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to understand that everything that we do as Muslims is to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the power of the message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us when He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O people who have come to know Allah, have taqwa of Allah. Be conscious in your deepest inner core of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَقُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا, and say words that are abundantly clear and refined and articulated with precision, because when you do that, tasud, you block off miscommunication. You block off confusion. You block off division. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not only tells us to say words that are clear and precise, He tells us to use the best of words. Because shaitan is lurking. Inna shaytana yanzaghu baynahum. Shaitan is lurking because he knows that the easiest cheap shot that he can take at you and take at your hearts on a collective level is to get you arguing about semantics. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, today during this khutbah, I am going to attempt to speak with absolute clarity and to tell you that I am not giving an argument pro-Mawlid or against Mawlid. I'm going to teach you with clarity what our scholars have said and how they understand disagreement amongst one another. And the reason why I do this is because I wish to protect you and to protect our community. And as much as I would love to just give a heartfelt reminder about loving the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I will save that for tonight and for Sunday. But let us today, let's put our jurist glasses on and analyze some of our tradition. And so the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was once, and this is narrated in Sahih Bukhari, he was once offered lizard, literally roasted lizard. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam refused to eat it. So we like follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? That's what we do. But Khalid ibn al-Walid, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, one of the greatest Sahabi that ever lived, and who loves the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than me and more than you. The Prophet refused to eat the lizard, but Khalid ibn Walid puts his hand out and he starts eating. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said nothing. And so the scholars of usul al-fiqh, of the science of how to derive legal rulings in Islam, they turn this into a qaida, into a principle of deriving legal rulings. And they said, at-tark, that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam leaving something, لا يقتدي بالتحريم. They said when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam leaves something, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's haram. Why is this important? Because this is usually the first thing that we hear. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam never did these things. The Sahaba never did these things. That can never be an argument pro or against anything in Islam, for those who are aware and have knowledge of the sciences. The second point is that all of the schools of jurisprudence, all of them recognize something called bid'ah hasana. They recognize that there was a world where someone could introduce a practice into the religion, and as long as it did not contradict directly any explicit verses from the Quran or Hadith, then this would be something that is generally good. There is no school within the schools of jurisprudence, within the schools of fiqh, that do not recognize the concept of bid'ah hasana. So if someone tells you this thing is a bid'ah, then you tell them, is it a bid'ah sayyi'ah? Is it a bad innovation? Or is it bid'ah hasana? Is it a good innovation? And the greatest of bid'ah hasana that we practice today is the most crucial aspect of our lives when it comes to Ramadan, which is the Taraweeh prayer. The Taraweeh prayer is a bid'ah. It's a bid'ah hasana. It's a good bid'ah that brought together the Muslims when they had all begun to pray in their little circles, right? So in a masjid, you'd walk in and you'd see a group praying Taraweeh and a group praying Taraweeh and a group praying Taraweeh. So Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu said, well, this is kind of crazy. Why don't we just all come together and pray Taraweeh together? Because he was a faqih. He was a jurist. He understood that we as people of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We are problem solvers. We are people who look at problems right in the eye and say, our deen has a solution for this. The third point is that I'd like to mention to you some of the famous scholars who not only considered the Mawlid to be permissible, they considered it to be recommended, mustahab. And of those is the eminent scholars of the Shafi'i school. Imam al-Haythami, rahimahullah, who his opinion is considered the official position of the Shafi'i madhab. And he wrote a grand book, his magnum opus, Al-Fatawa al-Fiqhiyya al-Kubra, in which he compiled all of his fatawa, and it's relied upon in the Shafi'i school. He considered the Mawlid to be recommended. And Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah and his shuyukh and his students, all of them considered the Mawlid to be recommended. And so Imam al-Nawawi, this is the book that y'all are all reading. There's not a person who walks into a masjid and you won't find them reading Riyadh al-Salihin written by Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. So how can it be that we love Imam al-Nawawi, we read all of his works, but this opinion, a bid'ah? That is a grand accusation. Imam al-Suyuti rahimahullah wrote a whole book on the recommendation of the Mawlid. Imam al-Suyuti rahimahullah. Imam Hajar ibn Asqalani, who wrote the famous book Nukhbatul Fikr, which is the relied upon book of hadith. You will not find one hadith student except that they have read this book. And he considered the Mawlid to be recommended. And the reason why I'm establishing this is because we want to make a point, which is that the Mawlid is an issue of ikhtilaf. It's an issue of valid disagreement within religion. And why is that important? As Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, the scholar that much of the modern Salafi movement built their methodology off of, he himself says this about the Mawlid. He says, وَلِهَذَا قَالَ الْعُلَمَاء الْمُصَنِّفُونَ فِي الْأَمْرِ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَالنَّهِي عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. He says that the scholars said, when it comes to amr bil ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar. You guys know what that is? That is when you feel like you need to tell everyone that this thing is wrong. That's what nahi anil munkar is. When you feel like something is so wrong that you have to speak out against it. You have to stop it. And so Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he says, من أصحاب الشافعي وغيره إن مثل هذه المسائل الاجتهادية لا تنكر باليد. He said, it is not permissible to object to it with your hand. He said, when it comes to issues in which scholars have valid disagreement, it is not permissible to stop them. As in to say, you can say, I'm not comfortable with this thing, and you exclude yourself. But you cannot say, on something where there's valid disagreement, this thing is wrong, this thing is bid'ah. You guys who are doing this are doing an absolutely wrong thing. That is just ignorance. Scholars who had valid disagreements never talked like this. And one of our qawa'id fiqhiyya is la inkar. La inkar. There is no objection fi mukhtalif fihi. There is no objection to that which the scholars have valid disagreement upon. And so this is a very important idea, that not all issues are the same, right? And so we have issues on things that we call al-ma'lum min ad-din bid-darura, which are the lowest common denominator of religion. And Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah considered that ma'lum min ad-din bid-darura, those things which are unchangeable in the religion, he said any 7-year-old in a Muslim society, you could go up to them and you could ask them if it was halal or haram, and they would tell you. So things like, can you eat pork? Can you drink alcohol? How many rak'ahs are in Fajr prayer? How many prayers are there? How many days or do you fast Ramadan? Right? Those things, those are the unchangeable things. But when it comes to issues like this, where there's valid disagreement, this is where Muslims need to live and let live. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. But now let's get to the second part of this. What is good? What is right? What is an imperative of our society and our context? The fact of the matter is that we live in a day, an age, a context that is deeply driven by love. And it is something that has caused us to lose many Muslims. Because when they walk into school, those who are doing things that are very far from prophetic know how to show lots of love, know how to make your children feel happy, know how to make your children feel energetic, know how to make you feel unrestricted, that you can let loose and be yourself and love yourself. But then they walk into our circles, and all they find is a bunch of people telling them how wrong, how prohibited, how haram everything is. And so this creates a type of cognitive dissonance in our youth. And they can hear up and down and left and right how loving the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was, but they won't care because they can't even buy a smile as they walk by a group of Muslims. The task of the day is to overwhelm our society with love, to overwhelm our children with love, to the point where they walk into school and someone might try to love them and they say confidently, well, that's nice, but you could never love me as much as my mother. You could never love me as much as my father. You could never love me as much as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. You could never love me as much as the people that I pray with at Isha every night at the masjid. You can never do that. Give them confidence in their hearts that the love of Islam is like no other love. And that is what we are doing this weekend. Raising the hearts to such a point where when they walk outside of their doors, out of these doors, and out of the doors of their houses every day, that their heart is so warm, so soft, so filled with love that it becomes bulletproof. And that's what it means to love Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and that is a love that nobody can take from you. So let us lift the hearts, inshaAllah ta'ala. Let us love fully, no more half love. Let us have full hearts that grab the person when they interact with us and make them feel just as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did to every single one of his sahabi, that they were the most important, the most celebrated person in his life. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. يا رب العالمين, do not leave us to ourselves for even the blink of an eye. Ya Rabbi, protect us from ourselves. Protect us from the evil of our lower selves, and allow us to rise and ascend to your love, to your mercy, to your compassion, to your beauty, to your beautiful commitment to seeing us successful in this life and in the hereafter. Ya Rabbil Alameen, so many of our brothers and sisters are in need of relief, are in need of aid, are in need of healing. Ya Rabbil Alameen, give them aid, give them relief, give them help, give them love. Fill their hearts with hope and comfort and serenity, and fill their hearts and their intellect and their bones with an unshakable optimism in your qadr. Ya Rabbil Alameen, bi rahmatika nastaghith. Oh Allah, in your mercy, we seek help, we seek aid, we seek relief, we seek peace. Ya Rabbil Alameen. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. أقم الصلاة.